Hi, everyone. Welcome back for another dispatch. The world has changed again since last week. I'm going to continue from all the beauty in the world about Michelangelo, but I wanted to say a few things about painting before we do that. I think a lot of you have heard me mention the book by Ian McGilchrist, The Master and His Emissary, about the two hemispheres of the brain, the differences between them, and the times we're living in. The left hemisphere receives information from the right hemisphere. The right hemisphere is the one that's actually directly in touch with the experience of being alive, the experience of being, passes the experiences over to the left. The left represents it, maps it, isn't actually in direct contact with the feeling of life, but is only in touch with the map of it. The left hemisphere, its main goal is power, individual power, utility. It loves mechanical things. These are all conclusions that McGilchrist presents based on hundreds of experiments, research papers on brain physiology, neurobiology. And the right hemisphere is the one that experiences empathy, connection. And McGilchrist, in the second half of the book, he proposes, he's looking at the history of Western civilization, and he's looking at how the changes in culture may be seen as changes in the dominance in the relationship between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. And it turns out that there is an asymmetry of power between them. And when the left hemisphere develops a sense of power, there's a positive feedback loop. And it gains more and more power. Sort of like the sorcerer's apprentice, until things really break down. And McGilchrist suggests that perhaps the last 100 years or so, we've been living within the domain being led by the left hemisphere, which makes things a bit topsy-turvy, upside down, because the experience of life is really through the right hemisphere, sense of connection, community, empathy. The left hemisphere makes everything very black and white. I'm saying this in the context of everything that's going on. I'm also saying this in relation to painting, because painting, all aesthetic engagement, in order to participate, in order to be involved, it's the right hemisphere that is leading. It's the right hemisphere that has the ability to create an aesthetic wholeness. When we paint, we are integrating the two hemispheres. The left hemisphere must participate as well. So there's something about aesthetic engagement for us, drawing and painting, that really does help maintain a sense of balance, clarity, ground, open-heartedness in the times we're in. So I wanted to Another plug for painting and drawing. Or any other heartfelt engagement, truly. All right. So we were talking about Michelangelo and this beautiful drawing. He begged the Pope, right, the whole thing about the Sistine Chapel. He begged the Pope for permission to give up. There seems to have been no part of him that reveled in the awesome grandeur of the commission. Am I? Yes, I am recording. Yes, good. Yes? Are we? Hello? Hello? Yes. Sorry, just checking. And yet, with many excuse me's, I work my way around the perimeter to view the most celebrated drawing in the Met's permanent collection, also a highlight of the show. Because of its sensitivity to light, I've seen it displayed on just one other occasion in my time as a guard. When he wasn't up on the scaffolds, Michelangelo went back to the drawing board, literally. This drawing in red chalk is one of thousands he must have produced. I look at a figure called the Libyan Sibyl. But what I really see is a model posing in Michelangelo's studio, a nude male model, perhaps a student or assistant. The Sibyl is meant to be a prophetess. But Michelangelo's typical interest was the male body. He ordered the young man to strike a challenging corkscrew pose, and I wonder if he was sympathetic about cramps given his own ergonomic struggles. I try out the pose myself before becoming self-conscious and playing it off as a stretch. Right, he's a guard, people are watching. Then I lean in closer. Given what I know about Michelangelo's discontent, how can a drawing this beautiful exist? It is on the one hand inspired, and on the other infinitely diligent. He's taken the time to shade every muscle on the model's back and arms. Michelangelo was responsible for some 430 figures across the ceiling, yet here he found himself so interested in the Sibyl's foot. He drew a big toe pressing against the ground 3 different ways and managed to make even that beautiful. Nothing on the sheet is rote. Every stroke evinces energy, ambition, devotion to the difficult task. Clearly, Michelangelo was one who could sit down with an empty sheet, forget his troubles, give everything he had to the work in front of him, and leave his bitter complaining for afterward. I doubt there's a better formula for getting difficult things done. When, after 4 years, the entire ceiling was finished and the whole world could be heard running up to it, according to a contemporary of Michelangelo had only this to say: I have finished the chapel I have been painting. The Pope is very well satisfied. He wrote his father. Then he added, other things have not turned out for me as I'd hoped. For this, I blame the times, which are very unfavorable to our art. Today, we call those unfavorable times the High Renaissance. On a different day, I'm assigned to the back team, which covers the long unfurling of the master's late career. He lived so unexpectedly long a life, nearly 89 years. He spent decades assuming he was at death's door. Even so, he never managed to wind his work down. He spent 40 years on and off preparing the tomb of Pope Julius II, begging for pay and suffering change orders all the while. The first half of the show has a demonstration drawing for the tomb it would have pained Michelangelo to revisit. He completed fewer than 1/3 of the sculptures planned. What happened to the light here? Did it get dark? Nor did his personal life settle down. At the age of 57, he fell in love with a 23-year-old nobleman, giving him gifts of drawings that are part of the show. I drew one of those, a portrait of this young man. It was so full of love. It was like, oh my goodness, magic. Yeah. A few years earlier, he lost a brother in the plague of 1528 and assumed responsibility for his three young children, the youngest of whom also died. If that wasn't enough, there was at this time a hostile army approaching Florence. As far as I can make it out, I said to an inquiring visitor, we're looking at a drawing Michelangelo made to beef up Florence's defenses. The spiky structures that kind of look like crabs, those are bastions and ramparts for returning cannon fire. Not only did he make the drawings, he was conscripted into running a large crew of workmen, some of the same men who'd quarried marble alongside him, now building for their lives. The visitor is a war nerd, he told me, and I do my best to remember the details of this particular aggression I've been reading up. I believe it was the Pope in league with the Holy Roman Emperor to bring the Medici family back into power. Michelangelo's defenses held up okay, but it didn't matter in the end. The enemy surrounded Florence and starved it into surrender. The war nerd and I spend another 20 seconds studying a drawing that must have been the result of weeks of field work. There are written notes about the surrounding landscape, and then he moves on. It takes most visitors an hour or so to feel finished with an exhibition that took Michelangelo 70 years to finish. This isn't a criticism, though knowing his temperament, I can imagine the master being annoyed. These war drawings ate up hundreds of his workdays, and they're just a neat sideshow for us. After a push, I am posted in galleries where Michelangelo was an old man, even by today's standards. Judging by poems he wrote, he wasn't exactly happy about aging. What file's incessant bite left this old hide so shrunken, frayed away, my poor sick soul? In his 70s, he was appointed the supreme architect of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. He wasn't happy about that either, having been given the honor, to his intense dismay and completely against his will. According to Giorgio Vasari, his friend, it would be impossible to imagine a knottier, more ungainly project to take on. Not only would he have to navigate Vatican politics, he was hemmed in by the work of two previous architects. St. Peter's would occupy the remaining 17 years of his life. I look at a sheet about 10 inches tall by 10 inches wide, whereon he dreamed up the shape of the cathedral's great dome, soaring above Rome. It would seem to be a superhuman assignment, and is one of the reasons the name Michelangelo sounds superhuman to our ears. On this modest sheet, however, he has freehanded a number of rainbow shapes, trying to find a curve to his liking. However exalted, he was not above this childlike exercise. I leave the dome and search out drawings linked to his other last project, a sculpture of the Pieta, left unfinished at his death. On one sheet, there are 5 studies made with a shaky octogenarian hand. Small, intense, earnest. They don't bear a trace of consciousness. They're being made by the most famous artist in the world. Even in his 80s, Michelangelo could upbraid himself for a misstep causing construction delays on St. Peter's. If one could die of shame and grief, he wrote, I would be dead. 2 of the drawings resembled the marble sculpture he eventually produced, with the dead Christ vertical, his mother supporting his great weight. Michelangelo originally carved a stout and muscular body of Christ, but then he just continued to carve, steadily emaciating the figure until it looked frail and shrinking and oddly like modern expressionistic sculpture. His Pieta of the 1490s was a virtuosic display. This was something more pained and private. I look again at the drawings, which express love, piety, and exhaustion. I think about an old man bent over a white sheet, struggling to make his hand perform what his mind and heart require. What made Michelangelo came in the next step. After completing his study, he got up and worked to make the thing real. He was hammering a chisel against obdurate marble just days before his death. It's a beautiful book. All the beauty in the world. Okay. Keep making stuff. Take care. Be well. Bye-bye.